And so I grew up with this mindset that men, they either abandon people or they take advantage of people. And that was the very first thing that I had to rediscover for myself in this process is, what does it mean to be a man? Because my models were broken. Many of our models are broken. And even those that we tend to idolize, right? We forget that they're human. Even though you look in the Bible, there's some pretty jacked up stuff that happens, right? These people that we consider heroes.
Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, the place where high-performing men are empowered to reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness while enhancing their career success. You see, in a world full of noise, burnout, and mediocrity, we believe what's missing is courageous and compassionate leadership in the home, because when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. You see, this isn't just a podcast. It's a movement of men who refuse to settle for less in our families, our focus, and our future. We are curse breakers and we are legacy makers. And I'm your host, Mitchell Osman, and I'm honored that you have chosen to invest your most valuable asset, which is your time, with me today. Now let's get into it. All right, welcome to another episode of the Dad Nation podcast. And today I have my friend David Waldy here. Waldy's how you say your last name, right?
That's correct. Waldo with a Y.
Waldo with a Y. I love it. And I'm excited about having this conversation because we're going to be talking about empathy. We're going to be talking about a bunch of things. But and I know a lot of my listeners, a lot of y'all are in business, you're in leadership, and you want to be better at caring more, to be feeling more, to understanding that, to really kind of build your empathetic side. So you're going to want to hear this conversation. And a little bit about David is he's actually known as the Fierce Empathy Coach. He's a high-performance men's coach, a business strategist, and a keynote speaker who helps leaders break free of self-sabotaging patterns, lead with clarity, live with purpose. And after a life-altering wake-up call, David left the corporate success behind to rebuild his own life, his marriage, and his mission. And he's since shared stages with the likes of Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, and other inspiring leaders in over 40 countries with his powerful blend of empathy, strategy, and intentionality. And as a husband and a father of four, David's message is simple. It's this: true success starts with how you lead yourself and those you love. Man, I don't know about you, but that bio gets me jacked up. So I'm looking forward to jumping in. David, thank you for joining us today, brother.
Mitchell, it's my pleasure, man. I'm excited for the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were just talking before we hit record, and we got a lot of things in common. We got a lot of, I think, aligned passions and aligned focuses. And so, you reference a life-altering wake-up call, where you left the corporate success. So talk to me a little bit about that, man. What was that? What is that life wake-up or that wake-up call for you?
Absolutely. So when I was a teenager, just like many guys, we're just doing all the things. I was in all the sports. I was taking all the classes. I was trying to do all of the stuff. And I did what everyone said you're supposed to do. Go to school, get good grades so you can graduate and get into a good college, and you can get good grades and graduate. The whole, that's the path, right? Everyone says that's the path to the American dream. Well, when I graduated from high school, I shocked my parents and everyone that I knew because I decided to turn down a full ride academic scholarship. I said, I'm not going to college. And so instead I moved to South Carolina, which is where I live today. And I started a 2-year internship program focused on leadership development, interpersonal skills, communication. And it was oriented towards ministry. I was honestly on the path to becoming a pastor, and very quickly realized that I did not want to be a pastor, at least not in formal ministry. And so that led me back into the workforce. And so I built my career in sales, Mitchell. Like I started, I've sold everything under the sun, from cell phones to coffee to transportation, personal services. Like I've been in sales most of my life. And what happened was I had a dear friend and mentor of mine. She approached me one day and she said, David, have you ever considered coaching? And I was like, like little league? what are you talking about? And she said, no, like high performance or executive coaching. And I said, I have no idea what that is. And I can't share her name or the company that she works for, but if I named the business, everyone on the podcast would know the name of the company. And she had been tasked with developing a coaching program for their executive leadership team. And she told me, she said, David, this is a $300,000 coaching program. And I said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Like, who's getting, number one, who has that kind of money to pay for whatever this thing is called coaching? And what the heck are you doing that makes it that valuable? And so I was very resistant to it, but she said, I need 5 case studies and I see something in you. I said, well, I appreciate that. But I don't really know what it is. And she said, if you'll trust me and give me 6 months, I promise you it'll be worth it. And so my first coach took me on more than me taking her on. It was during that season where I started to discover a lot of different things about myself, and my life quickly got upended, which led to that divine wake-up call. I had achieved the American dream, American corporatized version of the American dream, glass corner office, company car, 6-figure salary, generating millions and millions of dollars in sales. I was leading a team. And by the time I was in my mid-20s, I had achieved what everyone said you're supposed to achieve to be happy and successful. I was married. First kid was on the way. And Mitchell, I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, just trying to make it. And I say just trying to make it, which may not make sense to some people because I never really learned how to handle money. I didn't understand money. I didn't understand how it worked. And so my lifestyle was always above everything that I was creating as an income. And so this version of success started creating a lot of problems inside of me. I started dealing with a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, which eventually led to suicidal ideation. And there was a day I was driving down the interstate, speeding, shouldn't have been. And I had a panic attack and I almost wrecked. And so I pulled off the side of the road, and all I remember in that moment is I just was literally cursing God. I was like, I've done everything right. I've tried to do things with integrity. I've tried to care about people. I've tried to be a nice guy. I've tried to do all the right things. Why am I miserable? Why am I constantly anxious? Why am I stressed? Why am I this way? And at the time, Mitchell, I was about 60 pounds heavier than I am right now. Again, dealing with all these thoughts and all these things. And there was a series of events that, as we know, life will just throw punches. My wife and I went through a miscarriage. There were some situations that happened at the job I was working at that I felt like were unethical. And so I took to the ownership of the company, and it backfired. And I remember sitting in the boardroom, and the 2 owners were on one side and I was on the other side. We've all seen it in the Hollywood movies, like the big dogs are on one side and the little guys on the other side. And I'm terrified because I got a baby on the way. I'm trying to make it, and I've done everything the right way, the way you're supposed to do it. And they looked at me and they said, David, the only reason that we're not firing you today is because you're too much of a financial asset. We can't afford to fire you today. And essentially what I took that to mean is I was making them too much money and they didn't have my replacement. And it was in that moment on the back end of that almost wrecking, the miscarriage, and then this conversation that my world just started crumbling very, very, very quickly. And it was a Sunday afternoon. I felt like I was failing as a father. I felt like I was failing as a husband. I hated the man in the mirror. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. And eventually, which we may come back to, I would realize there was so much that had happened in my life that I didn't process, and I never gave myself permission to process, that it all kind of culminated in a situation where on a Sunday afternoon, I reached in my nightstand and I pulled out my Glock and I walked in the bathroom and I put it to my head and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, this world would be better if you weren't here. And it was in that moment, Mitchell, that to me, I believe it was God speaking. I know everyone's got different beliefs, but it wasn't an audible thing, but it was something deep, like it almost shook my bones. And I heard him say a couple of things that just dismantled me in that moment. He said, David, I'm with you and I'm for you, but I can't fix this for you. And for those that know anything about a pattern interrupt, that was a pattern interrupt for me. Like, I was like, whoa, you're supposed to be the one who fixes everything. I've been taught my entire life, Jesus, fix it. Like, I just got to pray. I got to put it in God's hands. What do you mean you can't fix it? Am I that broken? Am I that messed up that you can't fix this, whatever this is? And he said, buddy, I love you, but you get to decide. You get to commit. You get to become. And there was something that settled over me in that moment, Mitchell, where I remember setting my gun on the counter and just looking at myself in the mirror. And I literally wanted to just break the mirror. I was furious. I was so angry. I was like even God is telling me like that he can't fix this. What is this? Why am I here? What is going on? And a few things started to, like, I came down from the emotion of the moment. And I remember over the next several weeks, I was just battling with these thoughts of like, number one, why did God say that? What does that even mean? And what I came to realize through that process, and the reason I mentioned my first coach, is she started helping me to understand that I had lived my life shirking all of the responsibility for my life and putting it all on God. I had adopted a belief system that I'm where I am today because this is where God wants me. I'm this fat because this is how God made me. I'm this disconnected from my wife because God's trying to teach me something. And so I had put all of this responsibility on God and had taken none for myself or my own life. And I didn't realize that I had basically lived a life that I thought was surrendered, and I thought was being a good Christian, and I thought was doing all the right things that you're supposed to do, and going to church and trying not to cuss, but cussing occasionally, it's like all the stuff, right? And my world very, very, very quickly shifted. And I realized that when God said to me in that moment, I can't fix this, it was because I was not taking any responsibility for the head and the heart that he had already given me to make the changes that were available to me.
Hey brother, can we take a quick break from this episode, because I want to tell you about something I'm so excited about. Because maybe you're listening to this episode and you've been crushing it at work, but let me ask you, at what cost? Because behind the leadership title and the accolades, maybe your marriage is tense, maybe you've been snapping at your kids, or you've packed on some extra weight, and secretly you're exhausted. Deep down, you know it could be so much better. And I know what that's like, because that was me. You see, 10 years ago, I was in a big job with big goals, and everything looked great on the outside. But on the inside, my marriage was on life support. I was 50 pounds overweight and drowning in debt, stress, and shame. So I went all in, and I transformed my life. I spent the next decade studying everything I could about marriage, about fitness, about psychology, and about emotional mastery. And now I've distilled all of it, everything that I've learned and everything that I teach my private one-to-one clients, into my flagship trilogy called The High Performance Husband. Listen, this isn't just another course. It's a battle-tested framework to help you rebuild your body, reignite your marriage, and rewire your mindset without sacrificing your edge or your ambition. You guys, this has been 5 years in the making, and now I'm ready to give it to you. So if you're ready to be desired and respected by your wife again, to walk into a room with unshakable confidence, to keep your cool and master your emotions, or to lead your home with strength and presence, not burnout and guilt, then this is your moment. I want you to go to dadnationco.com/HPH, or just hit the link in the show notes below. Grab your copy today and become the man, the husband, and father you know you were called to be. All right, now let's get back into it.
Wow. And so, well, thank you for sharing that story, David. That's incredibly powerful and painful, and it's visceral. And I just want to commend you for having the courage to share that with the thousands and thousands of people you've shared it with, because it's that kind of thing that can cause breakthrough in other men's lives when they feel maybe some similar feelings or similar thoughts and hear you and then think, oh, so I'm not too far gone. I'm not too broken. I'm not too beyond repair. So I appreciate that, man. I know a lot of men really wrestle with that kind of transparency and openness. So, man, I honor you in that. So then you know, from that point of brokenness, you know, and that journey of recovering, then, you know, I'm assuming you went through that sort of transformation. And then what made you want to do this for other people? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what made me want to do it for other people was it was something I actually I'd like to say I fell into, if you will. It was, the first probably 2 years after that, I realized that I had been living my life to make everyone else happy. And I had been doing things that I thought were the right way to go about things. And I had even said my entire life, I'm not going to become an entrepreneur. I'm not going to build my own businesses, because I had a story that I had attached to. And my parents, when they were younger, my dad, he owned his own business and he was never home, and he wasn't at my games, and he was always on call. And my parents had financial problems, and eventually they got to the point where they just decided, they said the only way to save our marriage is we have to move. We have to move away from our family, our home, everything that we've ever known. And so we packed up from Topeka, Kansas, and we moved to Tampa, Florida. And it was complete culture shock, because my childhood, Mitchell, was basically Opie Taylor. I would wake up and I'd have a fishing pole on this shoulder and a BB gun on this shoulder, and I'd go out hunting, fishing, loving every day. And then we moved to suburbia in Tampa, where I can reach my hand out the window and touch my neighbor's house. It was culture shock. And I was about 13 at the time. I was extra upset because in Kansas, when you turn 14, you get a farmer's permit. And then we moved to Florida. I was excited. And they're like, no, you can't even get a learner's permit until you're 15. So I was pissed for about a year when I found that out. But it was this transition that led to a series of events that eventually I would come to recognize as part of the pain that I was carrying. And the 2 to 3 year process following my divine wake up call, I started having to come to terms with the past that I had just shoved down and pushed down and not ever really allowed to come up to the surface. And it was through so much trial and error and trying to figure things out on my own, and reading books and going to conferences and taking courses and working with different people. And there was a period of time where I was like, I got to figure this out. And I tried to figure it out all on my own. And I very quickly, just as you know, because I know how many people you serve and work with in a coaching capacity, is that I didn't realize that guides and mentors and coaches and people that have gone before you and done it before, how they can collapse the gap of time. What might take you 2-3 years on your own, you can accomplish in 6 months if you have someone who's done it before and has walked through that process before. And so that's when I started really, really understanding more about this dynamic of what professional development and personal development and coaching, what that could actually do in my life. So I started hiring coaches left and right, man. I was like, if somebody can help me get there faster, I want to get through this healing process. I want to understand myself. I want to know what my values are and what I stand for and my purpose and the things that bring me meaning. And I want to create a life that's aligned with the values that I carry. And so the series of events that really marked me is when we moved to Florida, my dad ended up leaving my mom, and I didn't understand it at the time, but I felt abandoned. I felt completely abandoned by him. And then the man that stepped into my life was my youth pastor. And I saw him as a father figure. You know, he was a mini God to me, like he could do no wrong. And there was about a 2-year period where he molested me. And I was in shame and terrified to tell anyone. My dad wasn't in the picture. I didn't know what to do, and I felt trapped. And so I grew up with this mindset that men, they either abandon people or they take advantage of people. And that was the very first thing that I had to rediscover for myself in this process is, what does it mean to be a man? Because my models were broken. Many of our models are broken. And even those that we tend to idolize, right? We forget that they're human. Even though you look in the Bible, there's some pretty jacked up stuff that happens, right? These people that we consider heroes. And so for me, it was this process where I was trying to do all of the right things. I was asking these questions we all ask. What do I need to do to fix my marriage? What do I need to do to get a better job? What do I need to do to grow my business? What do I need to do to lose the weight? And it wasn't until I had a coach that it was actually the one that I first told you. We were sitting at a Mediterranean restaurant eating shawarma and a bunch of food I can't pronounce. It was delicious, but it was one of those downtown Main Street places, you know, with the big glass windows. You can hear the traffic outside and the hustle and bustle of the kitchen. And she asked me a question that it was my tipping point outside of that divine wake-up call. And she looked at me and she said, David, who do you want to become? And I know it doesn't sound like a profound question, and maybe people have asked that question before, heard it before, but the orientation for me was always like, well, what do you want to do? 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 It was never, who do you want to become? But what was really interesting in that moment, Mitchell, was that these words came out of me almost involuntarily. I heard them after I said them, and I didn't even, like, it was an unconscious thing. And the words that came out of my mouth were, I'm not allowed to define that. And she sat back and she said, interesting. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me. And I said, I'm not allowed to define that. That's God's job. And it's my job to figure out what my calling is, what my purpose is, why I'm here, what I'm supposed to be doing. And that set in motion this realization that I had been living my life, this performance-based life of trying to do all the right things for love, do the right things to make the money, do the right things to have intimacy in my marriage, do the right things to lose the weight. And I didn't realize the core issue that I had been dealing with was my identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. All I had was this long list of everything I didn't want, which is most of us. Most of us have this long list of all the things that we don't want. And it was through this process of working with coaches and mentors and guides and working through myself and reading and studying and practicing and learning different tools and strategies that over time I started to shift and change. And what ended up happening was amazing. I found myself face down in a hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona, 2 months after I had quit my corporate job. And I was bawling my eyes out. And I was like, why am I here? God, why am I here? I don't deserve to be here. And what I had just left and gone back to the hotel from was speaker training for a guy that some people here listening probably have heard of. His name's Tony Robbins. I had been selected out of thousands and thousands of applicants. A list of 20 people had been flown to Phoenix, Arizona to do speaker training to represent Tony Robbins and a couple of his business partners by traveling around the world. This was pre-COVID, traveling around the world and basically representing Tony. And I was like, there's no reason that I don't deserve to be here. Mm. And what God started to show me through that process is that I didn't have to have all the right answers. I still don't have all the right answers. But what I could do and what kind of fell into place was that people started looking at me being like, David, you're not who you used to be. What happened? Like, you don't look the way you used to look. You don't carry yourself the way you used to carry yourself. You've changed. You're different. There's something about you that's different. And I started realizing that there was a lot of people that were just a chapter or two behind me in their own journey that I could pour into and I could help and I could encourage and I could build up. And then all of a sudden people are like, dude, can I pay you to coach me and help me through that? And I'm like, I guess, wait, could I be a coach? And then being involved in the Tony Robbins world, for anyone that knows, like that's the whole thing, is coaching, training, speaking, all of that. And so it set me on a path that now for really the last 5 years, I've poured my life into coaching and serving and training and encouraging and helping people. And it's one of my greatest passions in the work that I do, is just getting to pour into people and help collapse that time and to help them see the gaps and to help them discover who they really are and create alignment in their lives.
I love that, man. What a story. What a story. You know, your title, or you've been kind of known to be known as the fierce empathy coach, right? So to me, when someone says fierce and empathy, that almost seems like an oxymoron, sort of, right? Because to be empathetic seems, I think there's a connotation of this meek and mild lamb kind of thing, but then it's met with fierce, which you think alpha, assertive, dominant, so unpack that, man. What does that phrase actually mean? And why is it important for us to understand that as men, husbands, and fathers today?
Absolutely. So I grew up with a very skewed understanding of what empathy is. The first time I took a personality test, I was 15 years old, Mitchell. I took the Clifton Strength Finders. And for anyone that's familiar with it, it's an incredible, incredible test. But I took that test over the course of the last 20 years. I've taken it 3 different times. And what I found is interesting is that my top 5 strengths have never changed. They've been the same. But as a 15-year-old, when I first took that, my number 1 strength that came back was empathy. And I was pissed because what 15-year-old boy wants this girly, squishy word called empathy to be the number 1 characteristic of their life? Like, I wanted maximizer or like combative or like some kind of like masculine characteristic. And so for me, I had a very skewed understanding, and I associated it with an intrinsically effeminate characteristic.
Yeah.
That empathy is about nurturing and softness and gentility and all this stuff. And it was through this process of development that I started to realize that my empathy, that although it was a tremendous gift, was also my greatest curse. Because rather than speaking the hard truth in love, rather than asking the tough questions, rather than enforcing boundaries, rather than constantly, being the accommodating version of myself that I was, that there was a whole other side of empathy that I didn't understand. And I was effectively enabling the people around me. I was letting them walk all over me. I was basically a doormat, right? I was constantly feeling used and taken advantage. And there's a great book out there called No More Mr. Nice Guy. Yeah. I was the nice guy. Like, that was my life. I'm supposed to be nice to everybody. I'm supposed to let everybody go first. I'm supposed to suppress what I want. I'm supposed to get over myself. I'm supposed to, I'm just here. Like, my utility and my usefulness is who I am. And that's how a lot of men feel. I'm only loved and valued for what I can contribute. Right. And the problem with that was that my skewed understanding of empathy and why it developed into fierce empathy. I have a working definition right now that is constantly kind of moving around, but how I define it now is being fiercely committed to creating environments where others feel seen, heard, understood, known, and loved, while simultaneously having the courage to speak the hard truth in love, regardless of whatever discomfort may follow. And what that means to me, especially like in a coaching frame, is that I had a client one time after a call. They're like, dude, I just got to tell you, man, every single time that we have a conversation, I feel like I'm simultaneously getting a hug and a kick in the ass. I don't understand it. Like, I love it and I hate it at the same time. Like, it's frustrating, but it's beautiful. And what I realized is that most of the things in life that are truly valuable and really move the world forward are somewhat paradoxical. They are oxymoronic. There's like it's the yin and the yang. It's the Tao. It's like all these concepts. It's the dark and the light, right? It's the Jedi and the Sith. There's all of these sides. And I realized that we've swung so far to the side of the spectrum that is all empathy, that we've created a society where we're enabling people to harm themselves and destroy themselves. We're terrified to speak the truth, and we're constantly walking on eggshells. And we've lost the ability to have open discourse and disagree on things without resorting to personal attacks and character assassinations. And what I realized is that the people that I've respected the most, like, for those of you that are blessed to have a grandma in your life, like, grandma would tell you like it is. Like, she loved you and you knew it. But if you were being an idiot, she would be like, stop being an idiot. Like, whatever it was, right? the people we tend to respect the most are the people that are courageous enough to tell us the things that we desperately need to hear, but we don't necessarily want to hear. And we've created this society, and we all know this. It's just a bunch of echo chambers. We were just surrounding ourselves with people that agree with us, that like us, that look like us, that talk like us, that smell like us, and we're cliquish, right? Now, there's some benefit to that. We've always been tribal. Like, that's part of human nature. But the downside to that is that it creates an environment where you're never challenged.
Yeah.
You're never asked the hard questions. You don't have someone look at you and be like, is that true? Like what you said, is that actually true? Or you don't have someone who looks at you and says like, why? Why does it have to be that way? Why do you believe that? Why do you think that? And so for me, I started to realize that this thing that it felt like a curse in my life for so long could also be a tremendous gift. And it's not just in coaching, it's just in my life, is that I want people to feel safe around me, but I also want them, to steal something from C.S. Lewis in the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't want people to think I'm a tame lion.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, right? I do have boundaries, and I do have things that I've developed over the course of the years that I'm okay with and that I'm not okay with. And I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel secure, but I also need you to know, like, if we're going to be in relationship together, you're going to get better and I'm going to get better. Because I believe at my core, if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no such thing as just you're staying the same. I don't believe that. And I want to surround myself with people that are helping me grow and helping me get better. And I want to do the same for other people. I always want to leave people better than when I found them. And so that's a very long-winded way of saying that's what fierce empathy is.
No, it's good, man. I'm here for all the long wind. I think that was a key, one of the takeaways from that. One of my favorite recent books of, Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules. It's, he was just saying it's impossible to be in stasis as a human. You're either making decisions that are propelling you forward or they're moving you backward. And so a lot of times with my clients, I'll ask them, when you get home from work and you open the front door, those first decisions you're making, on how you greet your wife or how you greet your kids, those decisions are either propelling you closer to her, your spouse, or further away. Are you looking at your phone? Are you distracted? Are you carrying the frustration from work into the home and deteriorating your marriage? Or, or every time you go out and, go out for a meal or, wake up and choose not to exercise or, you fill in the blank. There is no such thing as stasis. And every decision you make, it's either you're growing or you're dying. You know what I mean? You're moving forward or you're moving backward. And I think that concept is brilliant. And I think if we could live with that kind of understanding, not to be psychotic about it, but just like be thinking about the quality of our decisions every day, because either way, whether we like it or not, we're moving one way or the other, And so another question for you, man, because, you talk a little bit about the world we're in, the culture we're in right now, and this tension of being, really like a Mr. Nice Guy, which I also love that book. My listeners would have heard me recommend that several times over the episodes. But there's this tension of like, you're either too soft or you're too hard these days. It doesn't seem like there's that you're either avoiding confrontation or you're bulldozing people. You know what I mean? So what do you think it looks like, for a man who maybe is listening and is on one side, he's like super alpha and he's assertive and he can be domineering, or the other guy who is getting mowed over and he is being taken advantage of. What does it look like to live in that middle ground for men in today's day and age? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know that I have, well, I'm going to say this, definitively, I don't have the solution. I don't know that anybody has the solution. I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. And I'm sure you've come across it too, Mitchell, is that everyone's trying to find the right path, right? The right way to do things. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with that is that every one of us, if you really strip us down to our constituent parts, is we're all incredibly nuanced and unique, right? I don't think that someone who's necessarily they're a harder driver or they're a maximizer or they're a little more alpha, that's necessarily a negative thing. Right. And I don't necessarily think that someone that maybe is a little more soft spoken and tends to listen and doesn't speak up as much, that's a negative thing. Right. And I think the danger that we run into is that we have a lot of gurus running around on social media. I want to be respectful. I'm not going to name names, but we can all think of those certain individuals that they're like, this is what a man is, and this is exactly how it needs to be, and you've got to operate this way. And if you don't have a six pack, you're a POS and like all the stuff, right? And I vehemently disagree, because I'll tell you that some of my best friends, like even some of my business partners. So I have 4 different companies, and I've got business partners that they're all very, very different. One of my business partners is straight type A, CEO material. Like, he doesn't fuss about, this is how it's going to go. Like, he's hard driving, etc. But part of the reason that he saw my value is that I recognize that in that context, I'm not a good number 1. I'm an incredible number 2. And I'll be the guy that has the balls to look you in the face and challenge you when no one else has the courage to do that, because they're terrified, because you tend to bulldoze them. So he recognizes and values that. And I recognize and value his characteristics that are not mine. Is he more of a man? Am I more of a man? I don't think that's the case. And then I've got another business partner who, completely different context, very different business. He is the most intentional, incredible listener on the planet. He knows he's not a number 1 guy. He also knows he's not a number 2 guy, but he knows that he is probably the best number 3 guy on the planet. And he recognizes that, and it doesn't make him feel any less than, because we create these hierarchies, right? But he is so incredible at listening that if I need someone that I need to verbally process with and to help me to recognize the direction I need to go or get clarity, he's my go-to. And I think it's less about, okay, what do we need to change about ourselves? And it's more about, how can we learn to honor and value those characteristics that are different inside of other people, while simultaneously being willing to work towards a common mission, a common aim, a common goal. Because I heard somebody say at one time, if 2 people get married and they're exactly the same, one of you is not necessary, right? Part of the reason that conflict exists in marriage is because I personally believe it's a gift that allows us to be perfected. And if you see it through the right frame and recognize that this is helping you become a better human being, you're less resistant to conflict, and you can lovingly argue and fight together, not against each other. You're fighting for something greater. And so if you have mission and vision and purpose, and then what I would call our aligned values, okay? Mm-hmm. If you have aligned values, I think that's what's critical. And so for the guys that I run with, and one of our communities we have is called the Ardent Man. And it's an acronym. It stands for accountable, responsible, disciplined, empathetic, noble, and true. Those are values and characteristics that we have, that in this small group of guys that we have committed to each other, of saying, I am going to be a man who will be held accountable by my brothers. I am a man who takes responsibility for my life. I'm a man who's disciplined. Like, you set these standards for yourself that are aligned with your values and the man that you want to be, and you live them, right? And I think the problem is that we've got a bunch of people that are telling everyone else how to live, instead of looking at principles and values and character elements, and looking at words like integrity, looking at words like accountability, looking at words that really have depth of meaning, instead of like, well, this is how he's supposed to look, and this is how he's supposed to dress, and this is how he's supposed to talk, and this is how he's supposed to interact, and this is how he's supposed to, like, all these things that to me are extremely superficial, because I believe that everyone has intrinsic value, but everyone doesn't understand their value. And so creating, I believe it starts at the dining room table. If you can do that at home, and you can communicate to your wife and kids the value that you see inside of them, that germinates and spreads. And where everyone seems to be out here trying to change the world instead of trying to change their neighborhood and their town first.
Yeah, I love that.
Hey, brother, does this sound familiar to you? Maybe you're powerful at work, you're respected, you're competent, you're driven, but when you walk through the door at home, you feel like a stranger. Maybe your marriage feels distant. Maybe your temper's shorter, your body's softer, and you've been stuck in this loop where you're showing up for everyone except for the people that matter the most. I know that pain because I lived it. And that's why I created the Dad Nation Coalition, which is a 1-year high-level coaching community for career-driven men who are done settling for success in only one area of their life. This isn't just about getting more productive or working harder. This is about reclaiming your role as a present, powerful, and peaceful leader in your home, in your marriage, and in your body. Inside the coalition, we don't just talk about growth, we build it. You will create a life that your wife wants to be a part of. You'll become a father your kids look up to. You'll wake up proud of the man staring back at you in the mirror. And here's the best part, you won't do it alone. You'll be surrounded by a brotherhood of men who will challenge your excuses, sharpen your edge, and celebrate your wins like family. In the DNC, you're going to get 12 months of bi-weekly coaching calls with me and the other members of the coalition. You're going to get a customized fitness and nutrition plan designed for your specific goals, and exclusive access to my flagship trilogy called The High Performance Husband. You're going to get a one-to-one mastermind with me where we build your blueprint for success in every area. And lastly, an invitation to our exclusive annual mastermind and retreat. Brother, this is the framework that I use with my private clients, and it's led to real marriages saved, real bodies transformed, and real men rising up as the leaders they were meant to be. So if you're ready to rebuild your body, reignite your marriage, and rise up as a high-performance man of purpose, then apply today. Go to dadnationco.com/DNC or hit the link in the show notes below. Brother, let's make these next 12 months be the ones that changed everything for you. All right, now let's get back into it.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was. I was writing this out and I read it somewhere, but the quote was like, everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to help mom do the dishes.
Come on, man. That'll preach.
And that's exactly what you're saying, and it's so much so the case. And I love how you phrased, that answer, because I'm with you 100%. It's if we were all the same, if we were all in the middle, there would be no growth, because like you said, we'd be redundant. But isn't that funny though? It's like we're all so tribal, or we also love to be put in boxes, whether we like it or not. And it's like, oh, I just need to find you know what box I fit in? Can you tell me? And then you're trying to fit in all these other boxes, and you don't even necessarily recognize, the gifts and qualities that you carry in your own, right? And so I think that is a big journey, I think, for men, especially because we and I'd love to hear your thoughts are on this, but men so often, one of the biggest questions I ask my clients is, what do you want?
Yeah.
And 95% don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you mean to tell me you run a 7-figure business, you got this, you're on this board of directors, you're doing this, and you don't know what you want?
Yeah.
But it's like they're so lost in striving and achieving and meeting everyone else's needs that when I say, hey, like, what do you want? Another question is, what do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
When your friends are having a beer at the pub or whatever, or when you pass on and your kids are sitting around the table talking about the man you were, the father you were, what do you want them to say?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, I don't know. Yeah. But I'm like, these are the questions we need to wrestle with. Yeah. But we spend so much time striving and focusing and trying to grow and serve everyone else. And you know what I mean? And we lose sense of who we are and who we're becoming in the process, right? Would you agree with that?
I would. And I love that you talked about these boxes, because, and I'm sure it's the same in your work, and this is an identity crisis. Like the problems in our country and in our world, I believe it is identity crisis. People don't know who they are, and they've taken on so many labels. And I understand why, right? Because if you're lonely and you feel disconnected and you don't have, support, if you don't feel loved, you're going to gravitate to whatever place shouts the loudest that we will accept you, we love you, we'll take you just the way you are, right? And you can apply that to anything LGBTQ plus IA. You can apply that to any church denomination. You can apply that to every social club. You can apply it to politics, right? Is that it's like, come here as you are, and we love you for you. And the problem is that people have not come to a place where they can look themselves in the mirror and say, I love you. And I like you. Most people cannot look themselves in the eyes and say that to themselves. And so I think we're asking oftentimes the wrong question or the wrong set of questions. And I love that you ask people what they want, because it's the same thing. You can walk down the street and ask 100 people what they want, and maybe 5 will tell you. The other 95 will just give you a long list of everything they don't want. Like, I don't want this, I don't want that. And what's funny too is what people they want, it's completely made up. It's arbitrary. Like, I want $1 million, I want more sex, I want the mansion on the hill, I want a 7-figure business, but it's not clearly defined. It's just a bunch of wishes. And so I guess where I'm going with this, Mitchell, is that I think that if you don't have solidified within yourself a definition of what I would consider to be truth. And the hard thing about truth, especially in the world we live in, is that truth oftentimes is nothing more than a construct. It's a belief system, right? We all operate with belief systems. There are certain things that, depending on how granular you want to get, you can say like this Apple mouse exists, and then there's going to be some scientist who says, well, technically it doesn't exist. It just depends on your perspective, right? And so that's what has always fascinated me about my faith, is that my faith is built on belief, right? I wasn't there when Jesus died. I wasn't there when they wrote the Bible. I have experienced personal things that I believe were divine interventions, and I believe that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I'm a Christian. I'll shout it from the rooftop. But I simultaneously understand there's a lot of people probably listening to this podcast that just like want to give me the middle finger and say, F you, dude, I hate Christians. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't understand me, and I don't understand them. But we all believe what we believe. And the question that I always ask is, it comes down to, is what you believe aligned with who you want to be? And most people are like, I don't even know who I want to be. And so that's the first thing you got to tackle is, well, who do you want to be? Right? Well, I don't know. And I like to you asked for some tactical stuff at the beginning. This is a fun tactical exercise is if you think about your favorite movies, your favorite books, your favorite characters, there are certain people that like, and I'll ask you, Mitchell, what's one of your favorite movie characters? Give me one. You watch movies? You might not. I know you got your organized books in the back. Maybe I should your favorite book.
I've always been a big fan of The Matrix.
Okay. All right. Keanu Reeves. So you're a fan of Neo.
Yeah.
Why? What about Neo, like, are you a fan of?
I don't know, man. I guess just because he helps, I never really thought about it. That's a great question.
So what's beautiful about this, anyone can do this, okay, is just make a list of your favorite characters, superheroes from books, movies, whatever, and ask yourself the question, what is it that I admire about this person? What is it that I admire about them? What I call these, and what I believe they are these, I'm making up this term in real time. We're going to call it soul whisperings. Okay. Is that it's part of your soul that's whispering to you that is an attribute or characteristic that is yours. It's accessible and attainable. And it's an invitation for something that you can lean into. And the reason that it resonates with you at such a visceral, emotional level is because it is part of who you are called to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't speak to you. That's why everyone has their own preferences, and everyone's like slightly different, right? One person will watch The Matrix and they're like, yeah, I absolutely love Neo, but Morpheus is my guy. Like there's something about Morpheus, right? But if we take the time to do that, what it does is it starts to give us these list of characteristics and attributes. And then what you can do is you can take that list of characteristics and attributes and very simply you say, okay, where in my life can I take one small step today or on a weekly basis, how can I set a standard for my life that it's aligned with this characteristic so that it becomes more apparent and more evident in my life? And so Neo, right? You said to help. So very simple characteristics like, okay, what's one thing I can do every single day that's aligned with that characteristic that I admire inside of Neo to help other people? You're doing it right now with this podcast. You're helping a whole lot of people, right? You're already, and you'll find that some of them you're living it. But where I then try and transition people from is once you have a list of characteristics, what's beautiful, I call it the 3-paper process. And so you get 3 pieces of paper. The first one on the left, you write at the top, petty list, Petty. This is your permission and your opportunity to literally be as petty as you want to be. And you're going to list out every single thing that you're dissatisfied with in your life. So for anyone that's like, okay, David, Mitchell, I hear you guys. I want to give me something tactical. How can I define this man that I want to become, the father I want to become, the leader I want to become? Here's your practical and tactical. Get 3 pieces of paper. After you've done that fun exercise of naming characteristics, right? You might come up with characteristics like, well, they're helpful, they're kind, they're brave, they're courageous, they're, whatever it is. You take those characteristics and then you do the 3-paper exercise, the 3-paper process. And on the left page, you write at the top, petty list. And again, you write out every single thing in your life that you're dissatisfied with. I'm dissatisfied with my love handles. I'm dissatisfied with my sex life. I'm dissatisfied with my bank account. I'm dissatisfied with whatever it is. And you just make a list. And if you want to keep it simple, do the 3 buckets: health, wealth, relationships, right? You just make a bucket and you just brain dump every single thing. And you give yourself permission to complain, because guess what, guys? We're not allowed to complain, apparently, according to society.
Yeah.
But give yourself permission for a moment to just like whine about your life. Be a petty little child for a moment in this exercise. And then the second sheet of paper, what you're going to do is you're going to start at the top of your list on your petty list. And you're going to ask one of 2 questions. Either you're going to ask, what is the exact opposite of this? Or what do I want instead? Now, the hard part is that what do I want instead? A lot of times we can't define it. We just know what we don't want, right? Like one of my things right now, Mitchell, is I got these freaking love handles because I got a 7-month-old baby and the gym has not been consistent, and so is my 4th one. I got 3 others I'm juggling, right? And so there's been some challenges. And so if I were to write on my petty list, I'm dissatisfied with my love handles, right? I can write on the other side, like, I want my love handles gone, right? I want a flat stomach. I want whatever it is, right? You just use the physical body is a great representation. But if you go through your list and you write either what you want, if you don't know what you want, just write the opposite. If you put on one side, it's like, well, I don't like the level of intimacy and sex with my wife. Okay, well, what do you want? Well, I want sex, 14 times a week. Good luck.
Shoot for the moon, man.
Right? You do that and you put what you want, right? And what this does is it's going to give you a list of all the things you're dissatisfied with, and then it's going to start to give you an ideal. Now, the 3rd sheet of paper is called the gap. You're going to take that 3rd sheet of paper and you're going to split pages 1 and 2. And you're going to slide sheet 1 over and you're going to slide sheet 2 over, and you put that 3rd piece directly in the middle, and it's called the gap. And the gap is you write out what is the one thing that you can do as it pertains to that area of your life that can transition you more from what your current reality is to the reality that you want. As you start to do this, this can be very, very simple action items, right? If you say, well, I'm dissatisfied with my spiritual life and I want to be a strong spiritual dad, spiritual father, spiritual leader of my home. What's one thing you can do? Okay. One thing I could commit to as a standard every day is I could take 5 minutes to pray every morning. And you set a standard for yourself, not a goal, a standard that is a non-negotiable that you build into your routine. So you start to create habits. And as you do this, what I have found without fail is that as you start to do this, you will start to see the man that you want to become. Because you've gone down to the soul level, you've given yourself permission to whine and moan and complain about all the injustice in the world. And then you've given yourself permission to dream a little bit or think about what you want instead. And then you can see the clear action items that will help you transition from your current reality to your new reality. And Alex Hormozy stole this quote, but everyone says he said it. He talks about confidence as having a track record of undeniable proof. You do those things, those standards, those habits consistently for a day, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 60 days. The most recent scientific research on this says it takes 66 days. Some people it's 21 days. Some people it's 90 days. But if you will commit to something, the average person, 66 days, you will literally create a new neural pathway in your brain and rewire your brain and how you're approaching life. And you will start to embody and feel, and you will have effectively become a different version of yourself, an up-leveled version of yourself, an upgraded version of yourself. Why? Because you are consistent and you created a track record of undeniable proof. And you can now look back on it. And instead of looking back with guilt and shame and frustration and anger and pain and difficulty, you can look back and say, you know what? I've been consistent in this area. And your mindset starts to shift. Your mindset starts to change. And that's the process of becoming. And the more that you do that, the more you'll get clarity on that man that you want to become. And the more clarity you get on the man you want to become, it informs what you do. And it affects your external reality instead of what most people do. And I know you know this, Mitchell. I know you preach it from the rooftops. I'm sure you do this with your clients, is that if you want to change your external reality, your external world, you have to start within. Mm-hmm. And most people are trying to change everything out there so they feel better about themselves and about their life. And we have it exactly backwards.
Yeah, 100%, man. And, you know, it's interesting. We, I talk about that. I call it the trifecta of change. What you're talking about is neuroplasticity, really, at the end of the day, right? Like, It's this concept of the fact that our brains are malleable. But when we talk about creating new neural pathways, that's one. And number two, for me, another thing that we talk a lot about is our reticular activating system and how we can shift our mindset to see opportunities or things that were not otherwise there, which I'm sure you know a lot about. And you pair that neuroplasticity with the RAS and then the power of discipline, of daily consistency, day after day after day. You can combine those three things, man. Within 90 days, you're a different person. You do that for 6 months, and you're undeniable. Like you're just unrecognizable. So what you're talking about is hugely powerful, dude. And for anyone listening to David and what he's sharing, I would say myself, like this is something that I did to change my life. This is the secret, quote unquote, for those of you who are listening on audio. That is the magic sauce that everyone is looking for, but is unwilling to. The problem is they're just unwilling to do the work. And so, if you have the courage to lean into those things and be consistent day after day after day, and understand and how to rewire your brain for success, and understand how to take some of these subconscious beliefs into your conscious mind, and actually reform the way you think. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So, David, this has been a powerful conversation. I know we have to wrap it up, but I just wanted to ask just where guys can find you, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people listening to the show that loved what you had to share, love your story, and they want to know where can I take in more of David Waldy, Waldo with a Y. Is that how you phrase it?
That's fine.
Waldo with a Y.
With your permission, if you give me 60 more seconds, I've got a final thought I'd love to share real fast.
Sure, man.
Wrap it up. So, guys, every one of you that's listening right now, I want you to lean in for this moment and hear me, please. You've been listening to Mitchell talk about these things, some of you for weeks, for months, for years, right? Some of you have been following his journey. This work, I can tell you, and he will tell you, if you try and do it on your own, you are setting yourself up for you can get there. Don't, like, anyone tells you can't get there on your own, they're lying. They're lying. You can get there, but it's going to cost you in time, energy, and money exponentially more than if you were to commit to being held accountable to these things by someone that's walked through it. And so, Mitchell, I hope I'm not overstepping here by saying this, but for the man that's listening, brother, I'm speaking to you right now. If you have been considering this work, you need to reach out to Mitchell. You need to message him. You've been here, you've been a part of the community, you're a part of the Dad Nation, and you felt this, and you felt this conversation today. You need to have that conversation with him. I'm cool if people want to jam and create conversations with me. You can find me. You can, at the risk of sounding pretentious, just Google my name. You can find me. But you're here a part of this community. This man is your leader, the man that's sitting across from me right now, virtually. is Mitchell. So if you need help with this stuff and you're wanting to take the next step and you're serious about transforming your life and you have lived and achieved the success and you've got all of the stuff that everyone said you're supposed to have to be happy, but something's disconnected, you've already got your guy right here. You need to reach out to him and have that conversation, because this stuff we're talking about is his work. This is his, and that's why I love these conversations. And so, Mitchell, I hope that wasn't me overstepping, but for the guys listening, just get on his calendar for real.
Thank you, David. Man, I appreciate that, bro. Yeah, no, it's good. It's powerful work. And we could sit here all day and talk about stories of transformation that, I'm sure you've seen with your clients and myself with mine. But at the end of the day, really what we're saying here is it's time to take responsibility. It's time to take ownership and step in. Yeah. No one's going to rip the Snickers bar out of your hand. No one's going to take the cell phone from you. No one's going to take the controller, or, there's never going to be a pack of cheerleaders in the gym parking lot cheering you on. At some point you have to do it without looking for an applause. Yeah. And so take ownership of it all today and change your life. So thank you, David, for being a part of the Dad Nation podcast today. It's been a powerful conversation, and I know my listeners just have so much to take away from this. So, hey, man, bless you in all that you're doing. And I just pray God's best for you, and that this is just the beginning for all that he's going to do in you and through you in your powerful work that you're doing too, brother. So thank you for being on the show today.
Mitchell, it was an honor. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Dad Nation podcast today. Listen, if today's conversation challenged you, if it encouraged you or helped you level up in any area of your life, would you do me a favor? Take 60 seconds to rate and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. This helps us reach more men who need to hear this message. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Dad Nation YouTube channel, where you're going to find full episodes, clips, and exclusive content designed to help you win at home just like you do at work. Remember, your family does not need perfection. They need your presence. Your leadership matters. So keep showing up, keep leveling up, and never forget, when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. We'll see you next time.